Hi everyone, thank
Hello.
you for coming, giving up your afternoon. So we really want to make this as interactive as possible. We will share with you some of our experiences of working with tech startups over the years, and we will do some practical exercises which hopefully you can take away and build upon within your companies. But I'll just introduce Fourth Day. It would be remiss of me not to. We are a tech PR agency, PR and content essentially. So 50% of what we do is producing content, be that technical white papers, thought leadership pieces, blogs, newsletters, direct mail. And then the other half of what we do is find the right channels to push that content. So that could be traditional media, which is often for organisations the scary bit, the journalists. It could be influencers, it could be analysts like Gartner, Forrester, for example. It could be direct to your prospects and customers. We are an international agency, so our USP, if you like, is that we offer boutique PR services but on an international scale. So for many of our clients, they want to grow internationally, but they couldn't necessarily take on a huge networked agency, which could be thousands of people. We're 22 people, but we can currently offer services in 6 countries across the world. So I'll do a quick agenda, but like I say, it's a very fluid session, and please jump in any moment. But just to give it a bit of structure, in terms of what we'll do, we'll talk a little bit about why you would do PR, what's the point of it, and then just to make sure everyone's with us and engaged, we'll do a very short practical exercise on how well you can tell your story right now, if we were to put you on the spot. Lizzie will talk a little bit about a client that we've worked with since they were a tech startup and are now scaling up nicely. Mm-hmm. And then we'll go into the more practical sessions, and you'll see on your tables, everybody should have a communications framework. And that's essentially what we're going to go through today. We're going to look at what your objectives are as a business, both in terms of your financial business goals, but also your marketing objectives. Then we'll look at who it is that you're trying to target and drill down a little bit into the profile of that person. What sort of content do they engage with? What are they influenced by? What sort of events do they go to? Essentially, how can you reach them? What are the right channels for reaching them? And hopefully you can take that away with you, continue to work on it. We can send you an electronic version. So if you just jot down notes, then you can complete it when you're back in the office. Lizzie will then, and I will go through just some quick tips from things that we've learned over the years. So when to phone a journalist, how to pitch to one, what an influencer is, what really annoys the media. Then you can throw questions at us then as well, if anything that you'd like to know. And time permitting, we may not have time for this, but if we do, then we could take one company in the room and look at brainstorming a creative campaign that we can use the framework as a benchmark for, and look at the sorts of channels that we would target that campaign for that campaign. So that's what we'll try and accomplish.
So just to kind of run through, I think often when we sort of start working with, especially kind of like quite early stage startups, they're kind of like, I just want to get something out there, like ASAP kind of thing. But what we're going to do today, as Nikki said, is really kind of try and take a step back and give you a really tangible kind of framework that is the sort of foundation for everything moving forward. But these are just some of the things that more than sort of getting that quick big splash that PR can sort of help you do. So as well as kind of raising awareness and getting out there, which is hugely important, it's also, we work with clients that use it to kind of obviously support sales, whether that's getting lots of traffic to the website, helping support a trade event people are at, also attracting investment. So hopefully some of the stuff today, I don't know whether many people have had that before, but that kind of thing about elevator pitch and being in front of people who will hopefully give you some cash. Hiring people, recruitment as well. It may be educating the market about a new piece of technology that people don't really know about. Just some of the things that we're going to sort of run through today.
And I think the big one as well when you're a startup is looking bigger than you are. I mean, that's a big challenge because it's a competitive market. And how authentic should you be when you're describing the size of the organisation? We'll talk about that. So, what we'd like to do, if possible, is just split up into twos, if that works. It works perfectly. And one person will be the person explaining their business, and the person that you're sitting next to is going to be the journalist. So this journalist has been in briefings with tech companies all day. You're the 15th company that he's spoken to, or she's spoken to. So you've got 30 seconds to talk about your business and explain why it's interesting. And then the person that's playing the part of the journalist, I'd just like you to write down the 3 things that stick in your brain. Not big sentences, just 3 points that you take away from that 30-second conversation. And then we'll swap over. Does that make sense? Right, that's it. Thank you. I know that's a really short amount of time. Yeah. You probably will get longer, to be fair, but it's just giving you an example. When you phone a journalist, and because this is what we do a lot, they will usually give you maximum 30 seconds for us. So they're like, very busy, phone's ringing off the hook, I've had 300 emails, go. And so we're not meaning to put you on the spot, but that's sometimes what can happen if you're trying to pitch your story.
Do you see companies that are like, they've been going for 5 years and they're still a startup kind of
thing? Yeah.
So even if it's like really small, or like one-man bands, or people in like early stage, or looking for funding or to take it to the next step or something like that, just because then people will be like, it's quite a relatable, like, yes, that's me, I'm not too big or too small kind of thing. So
yeah. That's so true. Okay, so Lucy, I don't really talk about.
Yeah, I just thought
Daniel.
Before we kind of get into specifics and working on some of the frameworks, could just give you an idea of someone that we've worked with before, just to kind of show you how a campaign's kind of been shaped. So just kind of run through a case study. This is a company called Steamhouse, who some of you may know. They're a cloud consultancy in the Northern Quarter that launched in 2015. So it's run by a guy called Dan Foster, and previously he built from the ground up and ran Melbourne server hosting and then sold it. So basically we were kind of brought in to help work on his personal profile as well as kind of that of the business. But he'd always kind of historically been known as very much belonging to that sort of company. It had been bought up, I think he sold it for 7 million or something, and then we're sort of starting from scratch again with sort of a team of 5 or 6, so back to that kind of startup mentality. So what we did was basically, to kind of start, we wanted to make sure that his name was synonymous with this new brand, and that people weren't like, oh, Dan from Melbourne, yeah, of course, kind of thing. So we basically did a media relations campaign, which was just making sure that everyone knew that this was the kind of brand new venture, and explaining exactly what it did and how it helped other businesses. So they work primarily with creative businesses, which in the Northern Quarter you're not short of, but just sending out media relations. So that was a series of kind of interviews, press releases, just making sure that he was kind of here, there and everywhere, so that there was this some kind of explosion of news that he'd landed and arrived, and people were like, oh, what's he up to, kind of thing that would spark that. And then from there, I think the main thing is that it wasn't, we did a sort of splash bang, yep, this is the new venture kind of thing. But from there, it was quite a kind of slow, gradual. So that kind of got people's attention and knew that he was kind of out and about. But from there, it was quite a kind of slow incline to that kind of raising awareness, but then also credibility, because people were saying, well, what's different about this company that's different from the other one, because they were now also competitors in slightly different spaces, but not too dissimilar.
And I think one of the things that we always say about a PR campaign is just it's not just about a launch. It's not a launch and then it falls off a cliff. It's actually about building reputation and building credibility in the long term, and it's about building relationships that may come to fruition 2 years hence. You may get a little bit of coverage now, but you can't dine out on that forever. So if you're going to commit to doing it, even if you're just on your own, just set yourselves targets of doing something a little and often.
Yeah. So from there, it was that kind of like drip feed of stuff going out all the time, and part of that was also then making sure that they were getting included on kind of lists of like kind of ones to watch. So it was sort of 100 best startups in Manchester. We entered them for a couple of awards, entrepreneurial kind of stuff. But I think as well as that, we kind of did that media piece and making sure they were sort of getting out there. But we also tried to help with the kind of business development side. So we sort of said, look, this is where we'd sort of built, similar to what you guys are going to do sort of today, but a roadmap of like, this is where who your customers are and where they're going to be. And then off the back of that, we built a sort of calendar of, trade shows, events they should be to, Slack channels they should join. And it sounds like quite simple stuff, but it's just making sure that all those kind of dots are connected so that yeah, again, that whole he was here, there and everywhere. And then content was another really important part. So again, not something that was specifically going out to media, but just helping sort of cement Dan's profile as a sort of thought leader. So we did some work on LinkedIn around that. Yeah, so this is a kind of some of the results that we achieved. So we hit some of those kind of lists, those ones to watch, startup, entrepreneurial. I think the main thing as well is that we did a lot on the kind of tech side. So we do a lot of technical cloud related content for them. But then we also do a lot around the kind of business messages. So it will be things about company culture, creating a good office environment, mental health and well-being. So that's become quite a big topic for them to kind of talk about, and that journalists now kind of pick up the phone and ask us if they're kind of writing a piece on. And
I think we could talk about that again when we're going through our messaging framework, but it's not just what you do as a business, it's who you are, it's what your values are, because journalists are as interested in that as the product or service that you're offering. So when you think about what might my story be, you need to think more laterally than just what it is that you're delivering.
Yeah.
And there's lots of other types of topics that you could discuss.
Yeah, and I think the stuff that because we work with a lot of obviously kind of like Manchester-based companies, so we might do stuff on like, tech startup scene, but we also do things on Northern Powerhouse, if, property investment, how that's affecting rent, and where people have certain studio, there's lots of kind of different topics that we do. But yeah, and these were just a couple of nice kind of pieces that we got. And other opportunities that came out off the back of that. Manchester Digital's a really nice trade body, did lots of really good work. And I think we'd sort of done a certain amount of profile building, and they asked Dan to be on the, I think it's the board, it's called the community board or something like that. So yeah, hopefully that's just gives you a little bit of a snapshot of the kind of things. Again, I think it's just all those pieces coming together that can kind of have an impact.
The example I'm going to go through here is based on an actual one that we've put together with names removed, but not all detail, because we thought we'd leave some detail in to show you how it might look. So the first thing is the sort of business goals, and you'll know all of this. This is just something that you've already probably done lots of work on, but it's just fitting it into this comms plan. So, is it it can be in terms of revenue, it can be in terms of clients, it could be headspace, it could be you need to secure X amount of investment over the next 24 months, whatever that might be. Your marketing goals, slightly different, because it could be about awareness, it could be about your credibility, but it could be that you're raising awareness in what's a very competitive market. I mean, a couple of agencies here, for example, that's a really competitive market. So how do you raise awareness and stand out in a market like that? On the flip side, this could be totally new. Your proposition may be completely new, for example. Then you're educating the market on something that they have no idea exists, or they might not even know it was a problem. So that's a slightly different marketing goal that you have there. So we'll look at that. And then just the things to keep in mind of your long-term goals, that can either be, I want to be in Barbados on a beach in 5 years. It could be, I want to bring in an non-exec. I want to expand internationally. So just start thinking over the long term. Then we're going to talk about who we want to reach. And again, I expect all of you know this and can do this really quickly. So is that a particular vertical market? That's where we look at sectors again to see whether you want to be sector specific. Some people would be very focused on specific sectors. Then who is it within that organisation? And there's usually more than one stakeholder within any organisation that you need to get through. So that can be, you may be going in at sort of CTO level or marketing director level, but almost certainly FD is somewhere looming, procurement might also be looming. So you need to think about all those audiences.
And if it's consumer kind of more generally, it may be that, you just have a certain demographic in mind. So whether it's like, this is a product that everybody needs to know about, but I want to focus very much Manchester, Northwest, you might be like very like just city centre, for example, or like certain age ranges or backgrounds or things like that as well. So it's just having, and like Nikki said, there might be more than one, but just sort of separating those out a little bit.
Yeah. So we'll run through this really quickly because yours are blank and some of this will mean nothing to any of you. But this is just an example for a client of ours. So the first persona was the CTO. So when we're working through a document like this, we'll look at what is the responsibility of this person. So what does his or her day-to-day role looks like? Who are they answerable to? What are the pressures that they face? And if they were going to sell you in or up within their organisation, what would they need to know, basically? So that's some of the things that we can talk through with you for each persona. From that, we'll then refine, okay, well, if they're a technical person, but the person that makes the final decision is non-technical, we're going to need to arm them with content that enables them to sell upwards. So it's going to be non-techy, it's got to talk about the business benefits, it's got to talk about return on investment. We need to be able to demonstrate we've done it before, so we're going to need some case studies. That's what we need to arm our CTO with in order to be able to sell it within his organisation.
Yeah, and I think when we say content as well, like we're, within this kind of framework that we did it was a software client, it's very much about, giving them something that they could leave on the sales table or, something written that they could also put on the website that would educate, inform, all these types of things. But for content as well, which we'll come on to in a bit, but it could be, audio, visual, that you've got a podcast running. It could be that you've got something that you're going to send to the influencers on direct mail, a little personalised thing. It could be, so it's just thinking about, we say sort of content, but it's just something tangible, whether that's a written document or something in the post.
Yeah. So we'll just flick through these really quickly because this is a different person. His pressures are slightly different. He probably reports into the CTO. He might be more resistant to change because he's the one that's going to have to implement the stuff. So what are you going to do to make that person's life easier when he needs to onboard it, basically? Yeah.
With all of these, actually, what we found was really important. So we work on these, they're the kind of first thing that we do with any client. But what we found is really important is actually the picture. Almost every client that we've gone to is kind of like, oh, that's not quite right. That's not what Fiona really looks like. Yeah,
she wouldn't look like that, yeah.
So I just think having someone that is you may not find this, but having someone that looks like just a visual prompt that this person you're trying to reach really helps, I think, in being like, this is what they like, this is their style, this is kind of how they even dress at work or operate and things like that. So yeah, that's just something I think you may find that just even something as small as kind of like getting the right picture for these personas.
Yeah, because I think for the uni, for example, you may have multiple audiences there in terms of you want to encourage your students, but you presumably have to go to the wider community of businesses and you need to target them to get them involved. So, just breaking that down because they'll all have different. So again, it's just content. And then we, often in IT, we have to put procurement in there because they have an influence. And that's actually, the interesting one about procurement is they care really about your credibility as a supplier. So of course they care about cost, of course they care about implementation and return, but they really care that you are a credible partner to work with. So that's about your experience and your expertise in the market.
And for lots of people, it might be kind of on a smaller scale, kind of award wins and things that have sort of give you that tick. Or it might be ISO accreditations or how you get your paper from, all those sorts of things. So that's really important for them.
Chop and change it as you see fit, change the pictures, change the titles. It's all very specific to you, but it's just trying to get you to focus down we've had, in all the conversations that we've had, there are different audiences with very, very different requirements for all of your organisations. So it's just trying to think, what am I trying to say to each of those audiences and what sort of content is going to resonate best with them. So now we'll just do a little bit of work on messaging. Again, we'll spend 5 or 10 minutes on this and then have a quick coffee break, if that's okay with everyone. So in terms of your business messages, we just put a few examples here, but I think yours is blank, hopefully. This comes back to really what we were saying at the beginning. If you had to say the 3 things that the most important things about your business in terms of the service or technology or product that you're offering, what was those 3 key things be? What do you want people to take away? Again, this is very techie focused as an example, so it does not have to be this at all. But is it saving you time? Is it saving you money? Is it quicker than what you were using before? Is it making you more productive? Is it future-proofing your business? Whatever, is it making you look great? You know, whatever it might be. Just the 3 things that you want people to take away. But again, try and make it as specific to you as you possibly can, something that they wouldn't necessarily get elsewhere. I know it's very hard to be unique, there's probably no such thing, but just try and think about what differentiates you when you're communicating those messages. This is more about you. You know, we were saying the wider, so there's what you're selling, but then there's you. What do you bring to the party? What does your organisation bring to the party? That's about your expertise. So I can demonstrate that you should buy from me because I've been in this industry for X amount of years. I've worked with X, Y, Z. Let me give you some testimonials of people that I've worked with in the past. Let me show you the roadmap to my business. This is where I want to be. This is where I'm taking my organisation. I know in a couple of conversations I was having that question of what do we want our revenue to be? How big do we want it to be? How many clients do we want to have? It's for you internally, but it's also for you to project a vision to people that you're trying to sell to. You know, you could say, like, in 3 years' time, I want to be the best at this in the Northwest or the biggest or whatever. So this is very much the wraparound to your product or service. So if you could have a think about that. We've put evidence next to it because for each point that you put down here, try to give a how you can prove that. And that could be years that you've had experience or people that you've worked with in the past.
Yeah.